Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that's so fascinating, and honestly, it's pretty personal too, right?
Yeah.
It's the whole journey of self-discovery, finding your purpose in life, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And to help us kind of unpack all this, we're going to be looking at some insights from this Jungian analyst, Dr. James Hollis.
Okay.
Have you heard of him?
I have.
Yeah, so we're going to be pulling from his conversation with Andrew Huberman. It was on the Huberman Lab podcast.
Cool.
So Jungian psychology, it can sound a little, intimidating at first.
Yeah.
But we're going to break it down. We're going to make it super relatable, I promise.
Awesome.
But to kick things off, I just have to ask you this. Have you ever felt like you were living someone else's life?
Oh, yeah.
Like you were following a script that wasn't really yours?
For sure.
Like something deep down just didn't quite fit?
Yeah. It's a surprisingly common feeling.
It is.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people feel that. And Dr. Hollis, he suggests that a lot of us, we unconsciously adopt these roles or these patterns from our families, from society, and it creates this sense of self that might not really be who we actually are, our true self.
Wait, hold on. Did you catch that? He said self with a capital S.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's a really important distinction that he makes throughout the whole conversation.
Okay.
The self, capital S, is it represents our true nature. It's that evolving core of who we are, always striving for this wholeness and expression. Think of it like, an acorn.
Okay.
It's got potential to be this huge oak tree, but only if it's allowed to grow in its own way,
I love that.
Yeah.
So how do we distinguish between that true self and this sense of self we've kind of built up?
Well, it's about noticing. It's about becoming aware of the stories that we tell ourselves, the roles we play, the expectations we carry. It's like holding a mirror up to our lives and asking, is this really me, or am I living out somebody else's story?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And what happens if we realize that we're not really living in alignment with our true self? What if we've been following this path that was set out for us, but it doesn't really resonate with our deepest values or our aspirations?
That's when the real journey begins.
Yeah.
It's the journey of individuation.
Okay.
Becoming fully who you are.
Okay.
Separate from all those outside expectations and influences.
I'm already intrigued.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I want to talk about another concept that Dr. Hollis brings up, the unconscious.
Yeah, the unconscious, right? It's huge.
It's this vast, mysterious realm.
Right. It's really powerful.
So Dr. Hollis is reminding us that, we are driven by forces that are beneath the surface. All these patterns and beliefs, they're rooted in our early experiences.
Totally.
And that can really shape how we think and feel, our behavior even.
In so many ways. Yeah. We're kind of on autopilot.
So it's we're on autopilot, influenced by all these hidden programs that we don't even know are running.
Exactly.
Could you give us an example of how this might show up in somebody's life?
Yeah, totally. Imagine someone who they always seem to sabotage their own success.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they procrastinate on these important projects, or they push away opportunities that come to them.
Right.
That could be driven by an unconscious belief that they're not worthy of success,
Yeah.
Or maybe that good things are always followed by bad things.
They can't handle it.
Yeah. It's like a defense mechanism.
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah.
So if these unconscious patterns are kind of pulling the strings,
Yeah.
how do we even begin to identify them,
Right.
let alone change them?
It's tough.
Yeah.
Dr. Hollis, he offers a few strategies for bringing those to light.
Okay.
First, he says, just pay attention. Look for these recurring themes in your life. Those persistent challenges, negative patterns, the things that just keep popping up no matter how much you try to avoid them.
So the classic example of dating the same type of person,
Totally.
even though the relationship never works out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a tendency to overwork or a fear of intimacy.
Yeah.
A chronic need for approval. These patterns, they can be clues.
Yeah.
Pointing us toward those deeper beliefs that are shaping our reality.
Okay. So noticing is step one.
Right.
What else can we do to start uncovering these unconscious beliefs?
Hollis emphasizes honest self-reflection.
Okay.
He suggests taking some quiet time every day for introspection. It could be journaling, meditation, or even just a walk in nature. And as you're walking, just pay attention to your thoughts, your feelings, just notice what comes up.
So it sounds like creating space for stillness That's crucial in this process.
It's huge. It's in those moments of quiet that we can actually hear those like whispers of our inner world, those subtle cues and insights that we might miss otherwise.
You know, he also talks about paying attention to our dreams.
Oh, totally.
Right.
Yeah, dreams are important.
So he says, dreams are not just random firings of neurons. They're like this direct line to the unconscious mind.
Right.
And he suggests keeping a dream journal.
Yeah.
Looking for symbols, themes, emotions, anything that might offer clues about our deeper selves.
It's amazing what you can learn.
It makes you wonder what kind of wisdom is hidden in those, like, nighttime adventures, right?
Right, exactly. It's amazing. And, you know, speaking of wisdom, he also says we should seek out feedback from people we trust.
Mm-hmm.
People who can offer us an objective perspective on those blind spots and patterns. Sometimes other people can see things in us that we just can't see ourselves.
Right, yeah.
It's like having a friend hold up a mirror, you know?
Totally.
It helps us see ourselves more clearly.
And once we start to, like, understand these unconscious patterns, how do we actually work with them?
Ooh, good question.
To transform them into something, like, more empowering.
Yeah. Now that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
And that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
All right. Stay tuned. Welcome back. So we've just started to, like, scratch the surface of all these fascinating ideas of the self and the sense of self and, you know, the power of the unconscious. So where do we go from here?
Well, it's a lot to think about. But the good news is that Dr. Hollis, he actually gives us some, like, practical things we can do. We can start working with all this in our own lives.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Because, to be honest, I'm already feeling a little overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You know, just thinking about all these hidden things, these patterns, beliefs that might be, like, running the show without me even knowing.
Yeah, I get it. And Dr. Hollis, he knows that modern life, it's just this constant barrage of stuff coming at you, right?
It's true.
It pulls us in a million directions.
Yes.
And it's easy to get caught up in this, like, stimulus response cycle.
Okay.
Just reacting to emails, texts, social media, all the demands.
Yeah, I feel like I'm always on autopilot,
Right.
just reacting to whatever comes my way.
Is that what he means by the stimulus response cycle?
That's exactly it. And he says that this constant reactivity, it actually keeps us from connecting with, like, our deeper selves, from really tuning into what matters. He uses this really cool analogy. He says it's like being stuck in a hallway of mirrors.
Oh, wow.
You're constantly distracted by your own reflection.
That's a powerful image. Okay, so how do we escape that hallway of yours? How do we, like, break free from that cycle and create some space for real self-discovery?
You recommend something surprisingly simple. Just set aside, like, 15 minutes each morning for quiet reflection.
15 minutes.
Yeah, he calls it a mental reset.
Okay.
It's a chance to, like, check in with yourself
Okay.
before the day takes over, you know?
Okay, even I can manage 15 minutes. But what should we do during those 15 minutes? Anything that helps you connect with your inner world. It could be journaling, meditation, or even just taking a walk in nature. Just pay attention to what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Just notice.
So it's about hitting the pause button, right, on the outside world.
Yes.
Just giving ourselves permission to be present with ourselves.
Exactly. And he also suggests taking a few moments each evening to reflect on your day. Just asking yourself, you know, what are the stories I'm living here? What's really driving my choices, my behavior? Is it fear, obligation, or something deeper, something more, like, true to myself?
Right. Okay. So we're noticing those patterns. We're creating space for reflection. We're asking those deeper questions. What happens when we start to, like, uncover those limiting beliefs or those unlived dreams that might be holding us back?
Well, this is where things can get a little challenging.
Yeah.
Dr. Hollis, he talks about this idea of the greatest burden the child must bear.
Okay.
And it is the unlived life of the parent.
Whoa. That's a big statement. What does he mean by that?
He's saying that we often inherit these, like, unfulfilled dreams and fears from our parents, even if we don't realize it. So if our parents couldn't live a full and authentic life, you know, maybe because of societal pressures, limiting beliefs, we might unconsciously carry those same restrictions.
Because it's like we're carrying this invisible baggage from the past.
Yeah, like unspoken expectations that might not even be what we truly want.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. But it also sounds really daunting. How do we even begin to, like, separate ourselves from these patterns that have been passed down for generations?
It starts with realizing that we actually have a choice. we can keep living out the unlived lives of our parents.
Right.
Or we can step into our own authentic journey, even if it means going off the script.
So it's about reclaiming our own lives, defining success for ourselves, and finding the courage to express our gifts and passions, even if it's different from what's expected.
Exactly. It's about embracing who we truly are, like all of it. The good and the bad. And speaking of the bad, that brings us to another really important concept. Dr. Hollis talks about the shadow side.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah.
It's like all the darker impulses, the negative traits that we try to hide.
That's it. And he says that those shadow parts, they don't just disappear if we ignore them. They can come out in really unhealthy ways.
Oh.
Through projection, resentment, even self-sabotage.
So it's like trying to stuff those unwanted parts of ourselves into a closet.
Yeah, and they always find a way to come back out.
They always do. Okay, so he says it's important to own our shadow, to bring those hidden parts out into the open. But what does that actually look like?
It's about acknowledging those parts of ourselves that we judge, the parts we reject, but without shame, without guilt. It might involve journaling, exploring those emotions through creative expression, or just noticing when we're projecting our own stuff onto others.
So instead of trying to get rid of those parts of ourselves, we're learning to accept them.
Exactly. And Dr. Hollis, he suggests that when we do that, we actually free up a lot of energy and creativity. That was all tied up in, trying to suppress those parts.
Interesting.
He even says that the gold is in the shadow.
Wow. Okay, so we're uncovering those unconscious patterns. We're confronting our inherited limitations. We're learning to embrace our shadow. That's a lot of work. So where do relationships fit into all of this?
That's a great question. And Dr. Hollis, he really dives into this. He believes that relationships, they can be a source of huge growth, but they can also be a trap. It all depends on how we approach them.
Okay, I'm curious about this trap idea. What does he mean by that?
He uses the term soul death.
Soul death.
Yeah. To describe what happens when we lose ourselves in a relationship, when we give up our own growth to please our partner or to keep things peaceful.
Soul death. That sounds intense. Can you give me an example of what that might look like?
Imagine a couple that's been together for years, but over time they've stopped growing as individuals, they've fallen into routines, they've lost touch with their passions. They might stay together because they feel obligated, or they're scared of being alone. But deep down, something's missing.
So they're existing, but they're not really living.
Yeah, exactly. And Dr. Hollis, he says that this soul death thing, it can even happen in relationships that look successful from the outside, especially if both people have stopped focusing on their own growth.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap? How do we have a relationship that supports our individual growth and our connection as a couple?
It's a balancing act. It's about honoring our own journey and nurturing the relationship.
Okay.
Hollis emphasizes that sacrifice in a relationship, it's healthy when it's for something bigger than just keeping the other person happy.
What does he mean by that?
He's talking about the project of the relationship.
The project.
Yeah, like a shared vision, a common purpose, or just a commitment to supporting each other's growth.
Okay, I see. It's not just about keeping the other person happy. It's about something bigger.
Exactly.
So we're on this journey of becoming more ourselves, and our relationships can either help us or hold us back.
Right. And it takes a conscious choice to prioritize both our own needs and the needs of the relationship. It also means embracing the fact that our partner is different from us.
Okay.
And that those differences can actually help us learn and grow.
So it's not about finding someone who's exactly like us, but someone who challenges us.
Exactly. And when conflicts come up, which they always do, it's a chance to look inward, to examine our own projections, to understand why we're reacting the way we are. Remember, Dr. Hollis says what bothers us most in others is often something we haven't dealt with in ourselves.
That's a good reminder. It's not about blaming our partner, but about using those conflicts to grow and understand each other better.
Right. It takes open communication, a willingness to listen, and a commitment to working through things together.
So we're tending to our own inner garden, we're nurturing our relationships, we're embracing all of who we are. Is there anything else we need to know on this journey?
There's one more big thing that Dr. Hollis talks about. The reality of our own mortality.
Okay, now this is where things get really deep.
It's something a lot of people avoid, but Dr. Hollis believes that facing our mortality is actually key to living a meaningful life.
So he's saying that acknowledging our limited time helps us make the most of it.
Exactly. He says if we live forever, we might just drift around, never really appreciating each moment.
Okay, so we're back, and we're going to tackle the big one. Mortality, I'll be honest, it's not my favorite topic.
I get it. It's something most of us would rather not think about. But Dr. Hollis, he says that facing our mortality, no matter how uncomfortable, it's actually what makes life meaningful.
So he's saying that by acknowledging our limited time, we're more likely to really live it, to make the most of it.
Exactly. He points out that if we live forever, we might just drift along, never really appreciating, how precious each moment is.
Yeah, it's like when you have a deadline.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're super productive.
That's a perfect analogy. And Dr. Hollis, he also talks about how our ego plays into this fear of death. The more we cling to our ego, our sense of self-importance, the more we think we're permanent, the more terrifying death becomes.
Because it's like the end of everything we think we are.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting. Dr. Hollis talks about this observation that Jung made, that the psyche, the soul, it doesn't seem to recognize its own ending.
Wait, what? So is he saying that part of us lives on?
He doesn't say that directly, but what he's pointing out is that even when we're facing death, our dreams, they're still full of journeys and transformations, new beginnings even. It seems to suggest that something in us, it goes beyond the limitations of, our physical body.
That's kind of mind-blowing. But even knowing that, the fear of death can still be really strong. What does Dr. Hollis say about dealing with that fear?
He thinks the key is acceptance. By letting go of this idea that the ego is permanent, by realizing that our physical form is just one part of a much bigger story, we can start to feel more at peace.
That's probably easier said than done.
Oh, absolutely. It's a process. It's not like we suddenly become fearless. But when we shift our perspective, when we see that death is a natural part of life, it starts to lose its power over us.
So it's about making peace with the unknown.
Right. And Dr. Hollis, he even shares this really personal story about how, as he gets older, his main worry isn't his own death. It's about what will happen to his wife.
Oh, that's sweet.
It's a great example of how love and connection can help us move past our fears and find meaning even when we're facing loss.
It really is. It seems like in this whole conversation, Dr. Hollis is saying that we should embrace life, all of it. The good, the bad, everything in between.
He is. He's reminding us that this journey of self-discovery, it's a lifelong thing. There's no finish line. It's about accepting the whole messy, beautiful experience of being human and finding meaning and purpose in the midst of all the chaos.
So what does all this mean for us? We've gone deep into the psyche. We've faced our shadows. We've even thought about our own mortality. What are we supposed to take away from this?
Well, Dr. Hollis, he gives us this great call to action. He says, shut up, suit up, show up.
I love that. What does it mean, though?
Shut up means quit complaining, stop dwelling on the negative.
Okay.
There's always something to be grateful for.
Right.
Suit up means get ready, do the work.
Yeah.
Don't wait for life to hand you everything.
And show up.
That means be present. Engage with life. Don't be afraid of the ups and downs.
It's a really simple message, but it's so powerful.
It is. It reminds us that we have a choice in how we respond to whatever life throws at us.
And to make those choices, we need to ask the big questions.
Exactly. Why am I here? What's my purpose? What do I want to leave behind?
As Dr. Hollis says, ask large questions. You'll live a large and interesting journey. Ask small questions, and it gets diminished somehow.
He's encouraging us to choose the path that helps us grow, even if it's hard.
And to find that path, we need to really listen to ourselves.
Right. Pay attention to those quiet whispers that lead us towards who we're meant to be.
Well said. So to our listeners, we leave you with this. What questions are calling to you? What path will you choose? The journey awaits.